Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Squires, and this is the Couches Podcast, episode number 121. I'm thinking 121. With my guest, Bill Gould of Faith No More. Just fucking rad. Bill's founding member of one of my favorite bands of all time. And one of, I talk on this podcast a lot about moving to Seattle and getting into weird music, but I was always into music that, not always, but generally I was exploring music even when I lived in Granite Falls that was outside of what everyone else was listening to. And Faith No More, outside of their big like breakout hit, Epic, was one of those bands. Like if you bought the record and you were expecting a hit list full of songs that just copy and pasted that, you would be terribly disappointed. But me, I was super excited. And I remember driving around listening to this with my buddy Dave Clark, who was also a big fan. And, I loved it and I still love it. And I loved the next record even more. So I don't know. I would say, Bill was, at least partially responsible for some of my early envelope pushing, at least with listening to music. So, I don't know if I owe him a debt of gratitude, but I appreciate his artistic output in a huge way. And also that he's such a down-to-earth and cool guy. He was super easy to talk to. We jump right into a little bit of a dicey subject about my former employer in San Francisco, this coffee company who there were 3 owners, and one of the owners got in some really hot water and had a number of women come out talking about harassment and abuse issues that had been happening over the years. And when Bill asks me about that, I'm honest with him because I never worked or lived in San Francisco and worked there and saw anything, but I have no reason to question these women, what they say. So I think maybe I sound non-committal, but I think the accusations against him are horrible and largely, inexcusable. And so, I guess I want to say that because maybe I didn't give him a defined answer when he asked me that. Yeah. Just keep your fucking hands to yourself, guys. Unless you're asked to put them on someone, keep them in your goddamn pockets. Don't be a fucking creep. All right. Like I said, I had a great time. Eventually we got to talking about Bill's label, KoolArrow, some records that he's put out recently, including Talking Book 2, which you should go check out. And he is working on importing some liquor from the Balkans called Rakija. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's spelled Rakija. I'll put a link up in the description of this podcast. And I believe that the brand is called Yebiga. I don't know how you pronounce the G sound. I'm great at fucking things up though. I'm doing my best here. Yebiga Rakija. That's right. And we talk about that at the very end of the episode. There are a couple little nuggets about Faith No More sprinkled throughout the podcast, but largely we talk about life and adventure travel and all kind. Faith No More's tour with Guns N' Roses and Metallica, and how weird that is. Because don't kid yourself, that's weird. And like I said, we just had a great time. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Now listen, I am bagging out of the Anchor support, okay? I'm bailing ship, and I started a Patreon page. It's a lot easier then the Anchor is a great way to deliver the podcast everywhere, but there's not a way for me to interact with supporters. There's not even a real, like, I'm not given your email address or anything. I couldn't contact you directly, and Patreon is a much better way to offer tiers. It's just a better thing. So go check out patreon.com/couchriffs. I'll put a link to that as well. Okay. So please do that. Thank you for everyone that has been supporting. I can't tell you how much it means to me. It makes this possible and certainly makes the videos possible. All right. So again, one last time, thank you. I appreciate it. I would like to thank River City Guitars, the guitar store in Spokane, Washington, run by my good buddy, Bobby Kluss. I got to come up with a nickname for him, like Bobby Kluss, the man that blank, the man that busts his butt. He's out there making sure he's got all the coolest stuff for his shop. Now, every week I pick a little something off the website. This week I'm going simple because I like Billy's punk rock attitude. This thing is a vintage MXR block logo Distortion Plus. Okay, it's $125. It's got 2 knobs, in and out, bing bang bong, done. This is how you used to do it. This was the pinnacle of overdrive technology in its time. And you can have, as my friends at Satellite Amp say, yesterday's technology today for $125. All right. Thank you to River City Guitars. And if you have anything vintage used or generally just sort of cool, I guess if you have it and it's cool, it's already used, and you're looking to sell it, get a hold of River City Guitars, okay? Every day is a buying day there. They're busting their butts every single day. Give them a call, 509-818-7693, or send them an email, sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. Include some pictures of what you're trying to sell, and they'll get right back to you. They're nice folks. They're easy to deal with, and you're going to love to deal with them. All right. Here we're going to get into the episode. Bill's the best. Man. And don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated, right? It's a real fever pitch out there. Don't be a dick. It's just not that hard. All right. Yeah, I jumped the gun. I was bragging. Oh, I'll be recording from the very top, but then I didn't have the session set up right. That's cool. Every conversation is an adventure. How you doing?
Thanks for being so flexible. I just woke up this morning and it was like, oh shit. But it looks like it's all working out for the better.
Every day I wake up and think to myself, oh shit.
Yep.
Here we go. Are you still living in San Francisco proper?
I am.
Where are you at?
I'm in the Lower Haight. I've been living in the Lower Haight since the 80s.
Dang.
Same house since 1991.
Is that right?
So, yeah, same place. Right. You know San Francisco pretty well.
I used to work for 4 Barrel Coffee. Yeah, my job came to I'm sure you read the paper down there. My job came to a screeching halt when they got hit with some harassment stuff.
Right.
There.
So you were there when that happened, huh?
Well, I didn't. My experience there is really unique in that I always worked remotely, so I never worked in San Francisco.
I didn't realize that. So, okay, when that happened, and obviously you knew your boss really well, right? I mean, all I know is from what I read, right?
Sure.
Media tends to paint things like this pretty black and white. I mean, is there any gray in it, or was he a monster that he was made out to be?
I feel like talking about this stuff, right? And I am fully into jumping right into this because it is it is a very small sort of slice of what we get delivered every day, right?
Right.
As a nation. Um,
Exactly. Actually,
and
all information, and you can't really trust any information these days, right?
it's really disheartening. So do I think, I guess, what was the question?
That was an
Was he a
extreme question I gave
monster?
you, but just like, is he the monster that I read about, or is there some gray there? Is there some? Did you?
Um, he was always, so there were three owners.
Right.
He was a majority owner, right?
Yeah.
And in any business, whether it is a coffee business or a band or whatever, there is a defined leader. And whether you're splitting the overall pie evenly or, it gets complicated. But he was the defined leader of that business. So, um, I don't think that the company deserved to, be nearly burned to the ground.
Right. Right. So I mean,
Because
yeah.
those other two folks are dear friends of mine. They are great people, and um, you know, it sucks that I can. It's like I almost can't even say that Jeremy was usually good to me. Once I started working for him, the dynamic definitely changed. I think he had a strange dynamic with people who worked under him.
Right.
And I don't doubt the claims that women made against him at all. I don't think that that's certainly not my fucking place in this world to
Right.
question
I,
women.
I kind of put you on the spot with that
No,
question,
that's
but
totally
people
fine.
do that to me all the time, and I just kind of wanted to. I
Yeah,
wanted
sure,
to do the
man.
same thing.
It was a huge thing because here's the thing, right? This is great that we're jumping right into it because when you burn something to the ground like that, let's say that business was an apartment complex, all of a
Right.
sudden there are 70 homeless people, you know?
Right.
And in this case, like, I try to not think about it selfishly,
Well, but
but
where's the concern there, right?
right. How do you,
Collateral damage in a way.
there is a ton of collateral damage. So, I mean, I can speak on my experience. I lived in Brooklyn. I had an apartment that, I lived month to month and they treated me well. It's just New York is an expensive place to live,
Right.
much like San Francisco.
Right.
And, I lost my job because everyone bailed. They didn't want to support. And to be fair, the folks, they panicked. They didn't know how to treat this situation.
Hmm.
They did, Jeremy stepped away. He left. They bought him out. But people, the public wanted blood. Essentially,
Right.
they wanted they wanted to, they wanted conviction.
And that's, yep. That's
And
how action gets taken. When you
right,
have that momentum, it just goes.
right.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. It definitely changed the way that I look at a lot of things that have happened since then. And it's been 3 years, you know?
Right.
Um,
I mean, personal experience is everything, though. I mean, you just talking about it and giving a little more of a larger view of an event is a big difference. I mean, if I don't have that conversation with you, all I'm going to be left with is what I read about on
of
sfgate.com
course.
18 months ago, right?
Right.
2 years ago. That's all I'm going to know, even though Four Barrel was like, 5 blocks from my house.
Right.
But nobody's, I always like to ask people things that have experience with situations.
And again, like, I never worked in the direct environment. I would come out
Right.
for a week, 2 or 3 times a year, touch base, like sort of stay integrated with the culture of the business, and
Right.
then I'd be off and running,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Um, but you're talking about a place where like 70 to 80, 20 something mostly people work, and there are tons of company parties. Everyone's drinking, and this is not something that's unique to um, that industry. This is every industry.
Well, the music business would never have been like that. I mean, that's the funny thing. I think about all this horrible touring I did back in the day and all the horrible things I saw, and
Yeah.
it's just like if you put that in 2020, it's just not happening at all. And it's just interesting to think about, what gets a lot of traction and what kind of things kind of disappear and never get talked about and never see the light of day. I mean, like the Harvey Weinstein thing, everybody was so shocked, but I mean, come on.
Right. I mean, who is? It's awful to hear details.
Absolutely.
But you're naive to think, anyone would be naive to think that that sort of thing isn't going on, and probably still.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Unfortunately, but no one's ever accused me of being a genius. I don't know how to.
I know. I mean, I'm going to get political for a second, but I mean, when you just watch things that the DOJ does right now in full view.
Oh, fuck.
And you go, nobody stands up to that. And he's doing it, committing crimes in public. Of course people are getting away with stuff.
Is San Francisco still an anarchist jurisdiction?
Only on paper.
Yeah.
I think...
or if we already forgotten.
There was a Proud Boys rally here on Saturday that I was.
I read about this.
They have to come into San Francisco and do that shit, and I guess a lot of people came, to kind of protest them, which is great. But most of them, I think, weren't from here. They were, bussing in just like the way the Proud Boys were bussing in. This is kind of a proxy place now. I think 20 years ago, it would have been a different story.
Well. I think back to the it's ridiculous because I lived in Seattle at the time. In the 90s, there was the big international meeting that happened right downtown, and a bunch of folks came up from Eugene and wreaked havoc. And they brought in the goons.
Right.
And knocked people around and was shooting tear gas. That was the first time I experienced anything like that in a place where I lived. And it's like, it's shocking. That's something you see on the news that happens in other places.
Right.
Right.
I've got friends who grew up in Bosnia, in Sarajevo, who, they didn't expect anything happening till it happened. A good friend of mine, he was out drinking one night. He was actually in the northern part of Bosnia, and there's a river that separates Bosnia from Croatia. And he went out drinking one night, and he came home around 3 a.m. drunk. And his dad, he was like 17 years old. His dad was like, he had a suitcase, he had 500 Deutschmarks, and said, "Go, walk over the bridge, go out of here." He's like, "What are you talking about? I was just out, having a great time." He's like, "Just get out of here. Call me when you get there." Walked over the bridge and the war broke out that day. Couldn't have seen it coming. But his dad lived through World War II and he could smell these little things. And it's funny, you don't imagine that till it actually hits you, and then you're like, wow, like this is a real thing.
Did his dad make it?
He did not. Actually, he saw him, next time he saw him was 2 years later in a refugee camp.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. I mean, crazy. And his mom stayed behind, and she made it through. She survived, but it was a bad scene. But I mean, so I talked to my friends from that area because that country broke up, and then just say like, "Hey, man, this is kind of like what I think I'm seeing,"
Right?
And they're like, "Yeah, pretty much." Like, I can give you some, here's some links if you want to read about, how to psychologically prepare, because it kind of comes to you. You don't have to do anything. If the wheels are in motion, you just gotta deal.
I try to not be an alarmist,
Hmm.
and I try
Right.
to, I try to be rational and reasonable. And like I said, that experience uh, with Four Barrel changed a lot of things for me.
Uh-huh.
But, I watched Handmaid's Tale this year, and that was kind of a mistake, man. Did you watch this shit? It,
I started watching. My wife was like, "This is not happening. We're not going to watch this."
it's really brutal, but there are
Right.
things about
Yeah.
it which are not unthinkable.
Absolutely.
And
Totally. Changing the
case
street signs to me was a big deal. When I saw they changing the subway signs, like that's like I can see that. I can
right.
see that.
It's yeah, it's a weird time. And I think that as Americans, we've grown up with a lot of comforts. We've grown up, but I mean, I'm a nearly 50-year-old white guy. I grew
Yeah.
up with certain comforts that
Absolutely. Yep.
uh even other Americans, but certainly people in other countries don't have. To backpedal, I've
Yeah.
been to a lot of places as you have, and I have certain comforts that other people don't give a fuck about.
Right.
Like they're doing
Like.
fine without them. They're not comforts, they're burdens.
Uh-huh.
And when I've done backpack traveling and,
Right.
uh, those times sort of like remind you, right? Hey, there's a lot of shit I don't need.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, this pandemic is like that as well, right? I mean, yeah.
I traveled to Cuba
Hmm.
when, it must have been 2007.
I've always wanted to go there.
Oh man, I'm telling you, it is really incredible. Um, there was that period of time when Castro had not made a public appearance, and there were only some addresses, that were signed by him, and everyone
Hmm.
was speculating that he had died.
Right. Right.
And I decided I was trying to pick a trip, and I was at the bookstore. Sometimes, if I wanted to go on a trip and I couldn't decide, I'd go to the travel section and just sort of like, let's see what grabs my eye. And then there it was, like, how to travel Cuba on a bicycle. And my
Cool.
mind was made up. So I bought a bike on Craigslist. I
Wow.
boxed it up. It was too small for me. It was a total fucking comedy. I'd left, Cuba after a month on a bicycle and had a terribly sore back. But boxed it up and flew to Cancun, and then from Cancun bought a ticket to Havana, and it was amazing. What a incredibly resilient place and resilient people.
I've heard that. I would
Um,
love to see that.
you know, I love the idea of social programs and a lot about socialism, but a lot of it has so far hasn't worked out very well, and
It,
probably
it, it helps to go see things for yourself, so
yeah.
you kind of see the things that actually really work and the things that really don't work. I don't think you can read about that stuff. You're always getting somebody else's perspective. It really helps to see things and kind of put it in your own framework.
It was interesting. Like you can't buy and sell a house there.
Hmm.
All of the houses are government owned,
Hmm.
and you are allotted a home based on the size of your family.
Hmm.
Um, so that was interesting. No one, certainly no one was hungry. Everyone was healthy. Everyone had health care. Everyone got an education. But there's a ton of opportunities that people didn't have. Um, and it's hard to say if that's because they've been getting fucked around for 40 years or
Right,
more, 50
right,
years.
right, right. It's open to interpretation why it is the way it is, right? You can't just blame that system because there are obviously outside forces that contribute as well.
Of course.
Yeah. But it's interesting to see, and it's interesting to kind of start figuring things out and seeing what works and what doesn't. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but I love going to places like that. I remember the first time we played Israel, and it was like just going somewhere and looking around. You can learn so much just by what you thought you were going to see and what you see. And the difference there is where you start seeing, I don't know, you start getting it, I don't think you can really get a place until you actually go there. You can start getting it, maybe. Getting it is a little ambitious, but
I have family members that are afraid to go to Mexico. Like they won't travel even to Mexico because they think that cartels are going to cut their throats. When they walk out of the airport or something.
A lot of people think that in San Diego, they won't go to Tijuana. And it's like, you grew up going to Tijuana and all of a sudden you're afraid to go. I mean, you've gone there for 30 years. That is really strange. How successful that fear thing can be.
The great thing is that when you reason with them and say a cartel wants nothing to do with you because you're not worth any money, like if you were rich, if you were Kim Kardashian, maybe they would grab you and try to sell you back, but they don't. What? I think you've as a typical American, you've overvalued yourself.
Yeah, it's weird. We've also, I mean, geographically, we're so far away from everything. It's just easy to kind of internalize like our situation as being like this kind of ideal situation, and anything outside of this is less than ideal. It's very easy. I mean, it's hard to go somewhere. If you're in California, where can I go? I can go to Mexico easily. I can go to Hawaii, and that's about it, or the rest of the country. There's nothing really that close by.
Right.
So I can understand that, but it really is good to get outside of that. It just everything is so much is about perspective and context. When you hear music, if you, Sex Pistols were a big deal for me when I was, 15, 16 years old. It was like, it was, I couldn't really compare it to anything else. I hated it when I first heard it. 12 hours later, I fucking loved it. But, until I went to the UK and kind of just spent a little time there, I didn't get as much as I could have. I just got the visceral first level reaction, and I'm glad, because there is more to it than that. I mean, it's the whole phenomenon was a deep thing, and Thatcherism was a deep thing, and it really can help you appreciate things better.
Had you done any traveling before you started touring?
Yes, I did. I was always kind of into traveling. I mean, when I was a kid, so we'd go surfing trips in Baja, California, which was that was pretty exotic, especially back, that would be the 70s, right? I mean, trips with my family, but that doesn't really count.
Right.
Those are torture sessions. But when I was 18, when I graduated from high school, before I moved to San Francisco, I went to the UK for a couple months by myself and just bummed around and stayed at people's houses and stuff. And that was pretty formative. That was a real, what can I say? That kind of cracked open a little. That was the beginning of a habit.
Did you have any idea? Did you know any people there before you landed?
I met this girl at a party, at a high school party. She was visiting with her father, and I hung out with her one day, and that was it. And so I had her address, and I just showed up at her house.
That's incredible.
From the airport, like basically straight to her house. And she's like, "You're not going to stay here, are you?" And I was like, she was the only person I knew in the country. And I was like, for a couple days at least, I was a stupid American kid. I was 18. I have a little stupid backpack,
Right.
But it was cool. It worked out. I figured it out. It was expensive. I wasn't eating very well, but no, it was great thing.
Did you make any acquaintances or friends there that you're still in touch with?
I did.
Incredible.
That I'm still in touch with. No, no, I
No.
did not. I did meet people that I lost touch with. They were all living in squats, and by the time Faith No More came there, so I was what 18. Faith No More didn't get there till I was about 24. So it's about 6 years later. They were all gone. They'd all scattered. And
Right.
back then, you communicated through letters, right? I sent some letters back and forth, but I mean, after 6 years and you're a kid,
Right.
just goes away.
The attention. I mean, that was a pretty brave move for an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, but I didn't think about it. Like it was just kind of like, I was just ready to go. I was ready to, see the world.
These days, you'd have gone on to Airbnb or even Facebook or whatever. There's a lot of different places you'd have gone and probably sorted out half your trip before you left.
Yeah. I mean, I might have done that if I was a couple of years older.
uh, have you maintained any that kind of adventurous travel in any other, like, have you done other
Oh yeah.
backpacking? Yeah.
I for that is the biggest best joy in my life is traveling. That is
Awesome.
the absolute thing that I live for.
And when you're doing it, I did. I don't know if I would do it again. I probably would. It's fun to, I'm pretty good at suffering, but I did 3 weeks across Mexico
Hmm.
on like second and third class buses,
Hmm.
with, and it's,
Hmm.
it's not glamorous. It is
No.
not even like a Greyhound. It is like, a plank and like people with livestock, and
Yep.
it's
I know
amazing
it.
though.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so are you getting down like that? Are you
I do get down like that. I have got down like that. I mean, so I Faith No More had a real, you know, we really kind of made a mark during the real thing, which is around 1989, and so we were in Europe when the wall fell. In fact, we were in Berlin the night the wall fell. So
no
we played
shit?
in Berlin that night, right?
Are you
And
the hair on my arms just stood up?
yeah, it's well, the weirdest thing of all was we were in the club and people were telling us the wall had come down and nobody believed it because we were just in a club. It was like any other gig. And then we walked outside. There was just these Trabants, these East German cars, just all over the street. It was like a huge party. We're like, "Fuck! It actually happened. It's happening." But that's when
Wow.
we were just getting popular. So Eastern Europe was kind of opening up for gigs right around that time. That's kind of when these revolutions happened. I think Czechoslovakia was like a week later.
Right.
It all happened very quick, like dominoes. So we got into there. We got into Hungary, and we played like Slovakia was real early. Slovakia was a trip because kids were just walking in like there were police with dogs barking, but the police didn't really know what they were supposed to do because the government had fallen, but there were still police. So kids were just walking in for free, and dogs were barking at them, but the cops didn't know to detain them or what to do. So we got into like Slovenia when there was a Croatian Yugoslavian war going on, and the soldiers all came to our gig, and so this was like a real flux time in Europe, and that kind of got me into. That's when I really got into travel, and one thing that when the wall fell in East Germany, they had these old cars that you had to be on a waiting list for 20 years to get. They were complete pieces of shit,
Right.
made out of fiberglass. But being the idiot that I am, I was like, I want one of those. And I was at a radio station doing an interview, and I was just saying, where can I get a Trabant? I know that they're cheap now. Nobody wants them. And this guy called up on the radio and said, come outside. And I came outside, and he's sitting there with his car keys and the registration. He goes, it's yours. Just gave me a fucking car. So I had this car, and this was during the Guns N' Roses tour with Faith No More in Germany. So I did the whole tour in that car, but we ended up I had this car that we drove from Berlin to Albania. That was kind of my dream. And that was when there was still like the embargo was going on, the Bosnian War was still happening, and Kosovo hadn't started yet. But I drove through Kosovo, and that's kind of it was pretty rough. But
Did you
that's
have
the kind
any
of thing that once you do that and you get something like that, it sticks with you, and you it's just the beginning.
did you
Actually,
have anyone with you?
yeah, my friend Eric came with me. Yeah, yeah,
But you
it
had
was cool.
no one local cuz
I had a local friend in Belgrade,
yeah,
and but I didn't know. I only had her phone number,
right.
and so we drove in, and it was fucked up because there was a war happening, and Serbia was under embargo, so I don't know how they let us in the border. We had no insurance on our car, we had nothing, and they just let us in, and we drove at night, and we got into Belgrade, and we just drove to the train station, like let's find a phone, and we went to a hotel, and we paid them to use their phone, and they came, picked us up, and brought us to their house.
Okay,
Stupid shit like that.
I have so many questions right now. Okay, first of all, the reminder of the Guns tour. I told Duff that I was going to speak with you, and he
Oh, cool.
asked me to say hello to you.
Awesome. Hey, Duff.
He
Great.
was singing your praises. So
I gotta say, by the way, we struggle a little on the Guns N' Roses tour as a band, but they were very supportive of us. I'm very happy to see what they're doing. I think that what they're doing now seems really positive, and I'm happy for the guys.
yeah, Duff is it's interesting to be such good friends with him now because
Hmm.
when I was 16, his band came along and kind of changed the way I looked at music.
Right.
And then flash forward many years, I'm playing with him and he just is uh and remains to be a super solid fella,
Right.
and a great person to bounce things off of because he's very reasonable.
Hmm.
He doesn't have his head in the in the fucking
Right.
stars or whatever.
Right. Right.
Um, and he's of the people.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Cool.
Uh, this car,
Yeah.
you have a register. Did you go and legally register? Or were you just like, great, thanks, man, I'm out?
I didn't register it. I just
And
drove
so,
it. Yeah. And everybody's like, in Germany, they were like, "You're driving this without insurance? Like, there's no registration? Like in Germany, this does not happen, you know?"
right.
And it was like, we did it. We were really dumb. We went out, we would get our crew, and we'd all hop in this car, like 8 of us, in a car that holds like 3 people maybe,
Right.
and go out, for the night, and drive back to the hotel around 4 in the morning. It's just stupid,
So everyone else is
stupid.
traveling on the bus, sleeping at night.
Yeah, that's right.
Or you guys probably,
Germany, most of the drives were day drives, but we did one. I did one with Mike Patton. We left the Berlin gig, and we drove around 6 p.m. and we made it. The next show was, I think, in Stuttgart, 12 hours. So we drove 12 hours. We got in, pulled in the hotel that morning around 8 in the morning. That was great.
was the production for that tour like a leapfrog stage being
I think
built?
it was for them. Yes,
Yeah.
we were just, we had a truck of gear in our bus, so
Right.
that wasn't our responsibility really.
Right. I guess I was just thinking about the sequel, like how many shows you'd have in a row. So you'd have a day or two between shows.
We
At
would.
yeah.
Yes, that's right. Generally, I mean, on those big tours, there was always like maybe 2 days on, 1 day off, something like that,
Right.
which for us was tough because we were going on really early in the night when there was nobody really in the audience to even see us, right?
Right.
We'd be done by 6:30, 7 p.m. And we'd be in this basically locker room where there's no windows, and we'd just be sitting, to the duration of the gig. And then we'd have a day off. And I think that was really psychologically tough on us because we did that tour for about 4 or 5 months. And after that, you just
Ugh.
start, it's kind of like quarantine, like,
It
what
prepped
are
you
we
for
doing? I
this.
mean, we came from being just in clubs every night where after you play the gig, you go to the bar and you meet a bunch of people, and who
Right.
knows, you're going to go to a party or something, to this like completely secure environment where there wasn't a lot of stimulation. So that was for me, that was tough.
I already know the answer to this question, but you must prefer the smaller scale, the more intimate.
I like, I just like information. I like action.
Right.
I think you could do them in the big gigs, but we were the opening band on this massive tour where
Right.
you know they want to keep you out of the way, do your gig, and stay out of our hair. Don't make any trouble. I understand it. I mean, every band does that, but it just we did it for a long time. It was strange.
It's taxing on a band as well. Like, if you are stuck in the submarine with the rest of your crew for that long, it is. You
wouldn't think it would be hard, but it is. It is
you better
hard.
have your relationship solid, right? It's tough.
No, we did. I mean, hey, after those tours, I mean, Jim wasn't in the band anymore.
Right.
And we were all, I can speak for myself. I was drinking a lot. I mean, what else are you going to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. We still carry scars from that time.
I'm
for sure.
I'm sure. Let me ask you this. Being on a tour like that, where you're like, all right, Guns N' Roses and Metallica, and then you guys they were theoretically flip-flopping the headline spot, right?
Right.
And then you guys are opening the show.
Right.
But you guys are already a well-established band at that point. You have Angel Dust. You're touring on Angel Dust?
We were, yes, yeah. That's right.
And was it still a good like a business move? Was it? I mean, it's for the experience.
I would say if you ask any band, if you were offered this tour, would you take it? 99.9% of any band, whoever there, would say, "Fuck yeah, I would take this." It's
right.
An amazing business move. But with these bigger bands, like what I've noticed, and Metallica was the same. Like our first big break playing in a big venue was Metallica, and our first gig was in Boise, Idaho, and it was the first time on a big stage, and I was like, man, what a great shot in the arm. It was for those guys to pick these nobodies and put them on the stage like this, but nobody really got it. And we'd sell like one t-shirt. There'd be 20,000 people at the gig and we'd sell one shirt. It actually was not a business move in reality. And it wasn't until like we would do War Pigs and James would come and play with us on stage that was the sign of approval that people could like us.
Right.
It was something like that, So, we were so back to the Guns N' Roses Metallica tour. Yes, there was in these big venues, but we were going on early. Everybody knew Guns N' Roses was going to go on late, so nobody was going to come there early. So it was a sea of empty seats, and you just kind of wonder. It's like shouting out into eternity. Like, is anybody going to hear my voice?
Right.
Yeah,
I think the thing that a lot of bands don't realize when they sign on for things like that, opportunities we would like to call them, is that they can they can definitely affect you psychologically, where you're just like, fuck, I just played the best show of my life. And I guess it's hard to not imagine, like, let's say it's a 50,000 seat venue and there are 20,000 people there. It's still a bigger crowd than you maybe depend.
There's no doubt about it. I think that I could have used that perspective,
but it's hard to scale.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. If you have, yes, that's right. But yeah, I can only tell you that what my mindset was at the time, and I was coming from clubs and then going into this thing, and it was tough on the perspective. Right. That's all I can say.
I prefer a large club or a theater. I think those are the best, because even a theater, you can almost make out and I have shitty eyesight. I see you got glasses on. I mean, you can still almost see every single face in the room. Right. And that,
that's right. It's close enough and you can hear things well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate those big shows with these giant subs, and like this sound blasting. It's just so artificial to me. Like reverb to compensate for the fact that it's outside. It was never my thing. Maybe also because, for so many years I've been touring where the bus pulls up to the venue in the morning and they're doing sound check.
Right.
They're saying, boom, 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 boom. from like 8 in the morning on. Like that's just not my sound.
Uh, it is that morning. Yeah, I never thought that I was going to get the opportunity to see. I had never seen the band in the 80s or 90s, and I thought, "Fuck, I fucked up." And then the year you guys played Download, there I was. We were on the bill, so you know, I have the good fortune I can go anywhere. Nobody knows who the fuck I am. So we got done playing. I hit, catering, and then walked over and watched from the crowd, and it was such a great day. But talk about a large crowd.
Yeah,
What
that
is
was
that?
amazing. Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that 80,000? Is that more? I don't know.
that was huge. That's a difference. Okay, so that crowd wanted to hear our music.
Right.
They were focused on us, so that's an amazing experience.
Of
It's
course.
it's when there's that many people they really could give a flying fuck about you.
Right.
That's different.
Per,
You know,
um right.
you just
Perhaps
wonder, like you in a way you kind of feel a little lost. You can. I don't know. You can have a good attitude about it, and you can get something good out of it. But when they want to hear it, I think it's a wonderful thing.
it's funny. I still have never seen the band in the United States, and I think we did festival dates in Brazil that same year.
Oh
Pretty
yeah.
sure Brazil and Chile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you guys record an album in Chile?
No. Where did you hear that?
I'm trying to like I'm trying to remember. I took a bus or a van ride back to the crazy hotel after. And so down there I got to watch you guys from side of stage, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, and there's just like a who's who of people. You guys have this broad fan base, and if you're on a festival, every other person who's performing wants to be on the side of the stage and be as close to the band to watch them perform. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I took a van ride back to the 40-minute away hotel from the site. Um, I don't think you were in the van that night.
Okay.
But I swear someone said that said that you guys had made a record in Santiago.
I've recorded bands down there.
You
So
have.
I think I was in the studio. I might have been mixing something there at the time. Maybe after the gig, I went to the studio. That's possible.
Oh yeah, okay. Um, but what a run!
Yeah.
That must have been
Yeah.
Did you think that was ever going to happen again?
No, not like that. No, I'd pretty much let it go. And I was not completely excited about doing it when we started it. But I was pleasantly surprised. I think there were definitely much more pluses than minuses. But I didn't think about it like that. But I did just keep working. I kept writing music on my own. I didn't stop doing what I did the first time. The only real tough part of that was that a lot of the music I write sounds like Faith No More because I write a lot of the music.
Right.
Right. So it's like, well, I can't really do anything with it. Right. But yeah, I think it was definitely different than I would have expected. I had no idea. I was smart enough to leave myself open to what it could be, and I kind of let it happen.
Certainly, there were a lot of offers over the years.
Yeah, there were. That's
Um,
true.
but you just didn't think that it would be received in the way it was?
No, that wouldn't be it at all. I mean, there's 5 people. There's
Sure.
4 people in the band who all had a say, and any one of them didn't want to do it, it wouldn't happen. And
Right.
just not everybody was in agreement to do it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a whole thing. That's the thing about being married to four
That's
people.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I just like, yeah, we are complex. Bands are complex, right?
You
Band
bet.
relationships are complex. We are even probably more complex than most because we should have never been together as people to begin with. We are just so friggin' different from each other. I mean, there is obviously benefits and dividends that come from that, which what we do create is bigger than any of us as individuals for sure. But we are tough to get on the same page.
That's an interesting Zoom call to be on. The
No, it isn't. It is not interesting.
well, uh, did you guys ever in the early years live in the sort of stereotypical band house together?
We did. Well, not all of us, but yes. Roddy and I had a couple places where Mike Borden was still living with his folks. He'd come into the city and crash at our place. And then
Where is he
they got
from outside of the?
Castro Valley, which was not
Okay.
very far away, but,
Yeah.
he could stay for the weekend or something. And then we lost our places and we stayed at Borden's house for a while. He and his girlfriend got a place. So we crashed on their floor. We kind of moved around. We had some musical. I stayed at Crash on Roddy's floor for a while when he got a place and, band shit.
I love that you went to clearly you're a punk.
Like that was my kind of, yeah, I imprinted with that, in my 15-year-old mind. So yes, that would be my formative influence.
Right. Did it ever, surely it never occurred to you that you would be in a band that had the impact that Faith No More did?
Oh, I always thought we could have an impact. I mean, so we came from this thing where, our first record came out on Mordam Records. We couldn't find anybody really to play with. We were definitely ugly ducklings in San Francisco. And Ruth Schwartz really, got behind us and she was awesome. But she was, affiliated with Maximum Rock and Roll. And there was this real ethos that came with that. And I always kind of questioned that and was like, if you have something of you have content that's valid and real, as many people should hear it as possible. Like, why not, do something that impacts the world? Why do you have to just keep it to these rules? And so my thinking was always like going on a major label was not a bad thing. It can only be as bad as you let it be,
Sure.
If you let them do what they want to, then they will. And you can only blame yourself. Nobody's going to hold a gun to your head if you dig your heels in and you stick up for things. And, we did that. I mean, Slash Records was an amazing kind of transition into that world because they were punks, right? I mean, The Germs was their first record. And
Right.
so they got us and they let us be ourselves. They encouraged that. But they kind of thought the same way. It's like, this kind of has a cultural value and we can work the Warner system and get this kind of weird shit out there. And I kind of thought like that too. I think there was something a little, I wouldn't say subversive. I mean, a lot of bands say they're subversive, but there's something about kind of getting something out there that's outside of the map, and kind of just something a little different. And that's kind of I think that's part of the enjoyment of what we did was that when it did make that connection.
Were you a Clash fan then?
No, not so much.
No.
They were too conventional for me.
Right.
And that's a sacrilege to say for a lot of people, but the Clash to me were always kind of just like a regular rock band
They're a rock and roll band.
As a rock and roll band. Yeah. I mean, that's okay. I mean, I like this. Actually, they write great songs, but when I was hearing punk for the first time, the Clash wasn't my first choice. I would go Sex Pistols all the way.
Right. They have that further, Holy Grail record.
Like, I was really just into more radical stuff.
Right. Were you listening to music? Were you playing music before you heard punk rock?
I was in a band. Actually, Chuck, our old singer, I was in a
Hmm.
band with him. We started as a cover band. I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and we started playing, like we were doing Beatles covers and stuff like that. And we started writing music, and then yeah, I actually heard the Sex Pistols record at their house during a band practice. Like, have you guys heard this thing, the Sex Pistols? And they go, I got the album, and I put it on. I was like, that's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And but we were, I'm learning bass, and what was the cool thing that the big brothers were listening to was prog, right? It
Right.
was Yes, it was Genesis, it was King Crimson, it was Gentle Giant, like stuff that I maybe even like I had to force myself to kind of like and get. Guess that was a good exercise, but I also, it's kind of like being an athlete. Like I realized I would never be as good as any of these crazy prog bass players.
Sure.
It wasn't going to happen. And so it was like, it all became more about technique and learning technique. And that's where I got the pleasure out of it rather than the power of the music itself. That's where the punk thing really got me because it was all about power. And it was like, that power attracted people spontaneously. And that's the vibe. After that, it was all about the vibe.
Right. I love that you were doing Beatles covers and then got smacked in the side of the head with the Sex Pistols. That's
Yeah,
like,
it was really unlikely. It was really unlikely. I was just like, I played at this house. I was like, this is horrible. This is shit, and literally 12 hours later, I think it was Submission was in my head and I couldn't get it out. And I was like, I kind of like this. I didn't want to admit it to anybody.
the thing about the Sex Pistols, man, is that it's also rock and roll. It's also straight ahead
completely,
rock and roll.
completely. Yeah.
And Jonesy's guitar sounds are 100% underrated.
Sure.
Like that album is a
That
ripper.
that for guitars alone is just iconic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What a funny guy.
Yeah, I've never met him. He is, huh?
He's the best. I can't even say his name without laughing.
Funny.
But I think I remember the first time hearing them also, but it was like 1985 or 86. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like way on.
Mm-hmm.
There was like some older kid that was like not quite a bully, but definitely not a friend. And I traded a tape to him. He had it for some reason. He probably stole it. I don't even know. But I put that on because I was like, all right, well, I see some people wearing this shirt. I lived in the country, population 1,000,
Right.
rural Washington State. And yeah, it kind
Where,
of like,
where were you in rural Washington State?
I lived in a little town called Granite Falls.
Where was that near? What's the
Uh,
nearest town?
do you know where Everett is?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you
Oh,
if you
okay.
if you
So
travel up
closer to
the
Seattle.
yeah up you're in Seattle, you travel north, you get to Everett, you head east,
Mhm.
and it's at the foot of Mount Pilchuck. It's a little
Okay.
logging town at the time, and they're not doing much logging anymore.
Hmm.
They damn near took everything down. So
Wow.
yeah, it's
So,
it's
so,
unrecognizable anymore.
so you were up there when you heard it.
Yeah,
You
I
saw a
mean that's
T-shirt.
where I heard. No, I bought a T-shirt eventually. I sold my comic book collection after I got this,
Always a good sign.
and I bought while I was there that it was like a place that was like you could get comic books, bongs, records, and I brought all my comic books in there to sell, and I was like, I'm gonna try this punk rock thing out. I never quite was a punk rocker,
Hmm.
I was
Hmm.
always I liked a lot of conventional stuff, but I loved that record,
Hmm.
and I walked out of there with partial trade, holiday in the sun T-shirt.
All right.
Um, yeah, but so you're at this time you said you were 13.
Well, when I heard the Sex Pistols, no, I was older. I played in that band at my friend Paul's house for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I was probably 15, maybe 16. What was it? What are the years? 81, I was 18. So it was probably 70. It was pretty, not too long after it came out, I
Right.
would say, around that time. 77, 78.
Did
Yeah.
you grew up in LA?
In LA, yes, in
Yeah.
Hollywood.
In Hollywood.
Yeah.
Were your folks industry people?
No, my dad was a lawyer,
Oh,
but everybody else's folks were industry people.
right. He represented industry
Yeah.
people.
I was ever present. Yeah.
um, back then, there was always a stereo in the house. You walk into homes now, there's like some sort of a console or a hi-fi. Did you guys have
Hmm.
a hi-fi and a record
We
collection
did.
in the
We
house?
had a hi-fi. Yep.
Yeah.
My dad was a music fan, so he actually had good taste. I would say driving with him in the car, I didn't like a lot of stuff that he liked. I mean, it's a generational thing. You never want to like what your dad likes. Right?
Right.
My father would be like, Led Zeppelin was the greatest band of all time. So, I was naturally going to be a little bit hesitant to like Led Zeppelin, for example,
Right.
because that's something my dad liked, right? But he had some really good taste in my formative years. Like when I was 9, 10 years old, he got the David Bowie Space Oddity record.
Wow.
So, and I was learning how to read. So those lyrics were a lot of fun when you're 9 years old. And he took me to his concert back when he played the Long Beach Civic. So I was in fourth
Really?
grade. I brought a friend from school. We went to see him during the Ziggy Stardust time.
Was that performance not recorded and made into an album?
It might have been. It was the Long Beach Civic.
I
It's
think
possible.
I believe that it may have been recorded
Like a bootleg or something.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
Wow. What was that like for a kid? Life-changing?
It was terrifying actually, because I grew up near, like, I had friends that lived off the Sunset Strip. So, my mom, when I was, first grade, second grade, she dropped me over to somebody's house to play, drive me over there, and, be hippies all over the place. And I'd see all it during the 60s, right?
Hmm.
But there was, came from a middle class white family, so I still lived in this kind of bubble. So going to the Long Beach, where there's people obviously on lewds, right? Obviously smoking weed and pop, I'd only heard about marijuana, but I smelled that smell for the first time. People had their faces painted. They were doing whatever the hell they wanted to do. And it was terrifying. It was edgy. It was not happy. It was really fierce. I'm kind of describing it through my eyes, but it was scary.
Right.
It was intense.
Did you
It was decadent. It was really decadent. It wasn't peace and love like the 60s. It was more punk
No.
rock.
Right. Did you leave? I mean, obviously your description, it left a great impression on you, but did you leave feeling like that was a good thing to see as a kid, or were you like, I'm glad that's over?
No, it was an amazing thing. It
Yeah.
was like, it made me aware that there was like life outside the bubble that I was living in.
Right.
I got to see outside the bubble, and it was like, I want to see more, What's life really like,
What a great lightning bolt moment.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that I got it as young as I was, and really a lot of my travel is that same impetus. It's like, I want to see,
And so this is so great. I'm just trying to imagine 10-year-old you leaving big-eyed. What the fuck
It was-
just happened? And but then when you started actually playing music, you were doing Beatles stuff. Did you do any Bowie stuff?
We never did. No, interestingly enough, we could have, but we never did. No, we did just cover bands. I think we just wanted to play parties. We just wanted to be a band and play. I don't
What
think we were
people
trying
wanted
to
to
change
hear,
the
right.
world. I was learning how to play bass,
Right.
I just wanted to be in a band. I wasn't too discriminating.
Do Do you remember why you chose to pick up the bass and not any other instrument?
It was the stupidest reason. It was I didn't even know what a bass did, but I was
Nobody used
hung out with
to.
these kids in school. Roddy was one of them. They were about probably 13, and they decided they were going to start a band. And one guy knew how to play guitar. He was taking guitar lessons. And Roddy, he'd been playing piano since he was a kid. His mom had given him piano lessons since forever. So he was the keyboard player. And you know, another guy who was a drummer, and they didn't have a bass player. And I wanted to be in a band too. So I just I'll do that. And I just came home and mom, I want to take bass lessons. And she's like, what? Why? I couldn't even tell her why, because I didn't even really know what a bass did.
Right.
But then I went to she's like, well, we're not going to, you're not going to get a bass. We're not going to spend a bunch of money. We'll rent one for a month or 2 months, and we'll take you to this place where you take classes and see how it sticks. And the first day I came in, and the guy taught me, it wasn't Smoke on Water, but it was something equally
Right.
simple. So I left that day being able to play a song, and it was like, that's it. I got it. This is it. And that guitar teacher, this guy, Pat O'Brien, turned it out. He was teaching a guy who was I was in Boy Scouts with also. So my friend Paul came and goes, hey, man, you're taking lessons from Pat O'Brien? I go, yeah, man. And he's like, well, come into my house and jam. And that's how I got into that band where Chuck joined in and got into the Sex Pistols and all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of crazy. This, crazy story, actually.
It's funny how many people, I mean, I don't think it happens as much anymore, but even 20 years ago, well, maybe I keep forgetting it's 2020. I guess 40 years ago, people didn't really know what the bass did because a lot of times it didn't exist prevalently in a mix, right?
Not so much. And it wasn't really. Yeah, it was kind of something in the background. I mean, it was all about guitars and vocals, all
Right.
of it. I mean, I don't know. To me, it was. I remember my dad going like, he loved music, but he's like, Bill, learn guitar. Don't learn bass. Why?
Right.
Why do you want to learn that?
I mean, John Paul Jones is a absolute crusher too. I mean,
Absolutely, and yeah, and they were next level. I mean, I never ever thought I would ever be able to do what they did. I just wanted to be in a band.
right. I guess where I was headed before is
Yeah.
so many bassists stumble into playing bass because no one else wants to do it, or that's the last
Which
piece
I
of the
did.
puzzle.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be a bassist, but I was a bassist for years, and I continue to play bass. I wanted to, I wanted to
I thought you were a
shred.
guitarist. Interesting.
I am. I mean, I
Yeah.
play guitar and bass, but when I arrived in Seattle, I left that little logging town. I joined the Marine Corps to get out of that town and sort of get myself saved.
Hmm.
And also, I guess, build the confidence to move to the city. I was not a very confident kid. So when I got to Seattle, it was like the peak of grunge. And I had a shaved head, which was not cool because I came straight from the Marine Corps, and a Jackson guitar, and nobody would have me. Like, really, no one would have me. I called all the fucking ads. I wanted to be in a band so bad, and finally, I found some hippies that were really nice to me, and I remained friends with them. And they were like, "Oh, our bass player just quit to join a bigger band," and I was like, "Oh, I play bass," which was a fucking lie. I didn't own a bass. I didn't really know. I didn't even know if it was tuned the same.
Right.
And so I borrowed a bass, and they gave me their demo tape, and I learned the songs, and then I was a bass player for years.
Cool.
It was probably the best thing I ever did for my guitar playing.
Did you ever get into recording, like engineering, that type of stuff?
I'm trying to get better at it now, but I know that you have produced some albums.
I have. I mean, the reason I brought it up was because a lot of bass players go that direction, and I was wondering
Right.
if you had as well. Like Andy Wallace, he was a bass player.
Is that
Like,
right?
yeah, oh, yeah. a lot of like these guys that are like really amazing started off as bass players. And I can understand because of the role you have in the band, you kind of do have to step back and see how you fitted with the whole picture.
Let's be honest, bass players and probably even drummers to a greater extent make the best producers because they're used to, you know, they're the real drivers of the ship and they're used to sitting back and listening to folks sort out their bits and laying it down.
Yeah, I think that yes, they don't have such a problem getting overruled on things. But also, I think when something is working, you feel it.
Right.
Like with bass, it's about feeling. And you can listen to a song by you feel it or you don't feel it, and
So
you don't kind of just hone in on details.
when did you record the early Faith No More stuff? Like when you guys were making demos, were you doing any of that?
I didn't. I was just the pain in the ass for the engineer, watching everything he did, and But we
Right.
did our demo, so we did everything ourselves. Like by the time we go in the studio, everything was pretty much arranged. So we did all the arrangement ourselves. All our pre-production was ours, and that was all me with a 4-track and working out parts in advance because we didn't want to waste money in the studio. We wanted
Course.
just to hit it and leave. We didn't have the money to waste, So we did as much as we could. So all of our music, we've always been involved in arrangements.
Is that a practice that you continued through?
Yeah, always, still now. Yeah,
tons of
that's
pre-production.
just the only way I want to work. I don't like this. Get creative and let the mood take you in the studio. I'm just not. That's not my thing. So a lot of people have done very well with that, but not me.
Right. That way you can just you can focus on the performance and not and you can focus on the performance with
Knowing the
conviction.
performance and having the building the it's like building the structure of the building. Get the
Right.
foundation right, and then you just do it. You execute it. That's how I like to do it. I see it like either you succeed or you fail, in a recording. And so to succeed, it's like going to war. You get all your stuff together and you get your tactics and you get it all wrapped up so you know what you're going to do when you get in there.
So on records that you've produced, have you gone back and forth communicating with bands with pre-production? Have you spent
I have a lot.
tons of time in
if
a
something
room
doesn't
with
feel
them?
right, I get it. I have to get into it before I've heard the music. If something's not working. And I like working with bands that think like that because that's how I think. So that's a big part of it. I mean, I really think that, 70% of a good sounding record is in the writing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a great song can have a terrible recording and still be great.
It can. And things sound bigger when they have the place to be where they are.
Right.
It isn't about, what kind of amp you use and what kind of strings you use and what kind of, which can make a difference. But it's if you're in the right place at the right time with the right feeling, it just translates. That's how I feel.
None of the old Stax recordings, they weren't worried about what kind of strings you had, right?
Stuff is classic. People try to emulate that now.
Right. And that's like a band performing live.
That's it.
The best way.
Yep.
What about your label?
Mm-hmm.
How were you always inspired to sort of create a platform to deliver music that you were inspired by?
Yes. I mean, it's really easy to sound idealistic. Like I just wanted to be a platform for artists. Like you hear that shit all the time.
Right.
But the reality was Faith No More was breaking up and I needed to do something with myself creatively. And the most exciting thing that really got me was all this cool stuff that I'd heard while I was touring from places that I knew nobody knew about here. So it kind of was what made me want to, it was a lot of work, but I didn't mind doing that kind of work. So, I worked with a band in Russia. I went to Russia and recorded for a couple months, or Finland. And this is like, I'm out there, I'm recording with them, I'm living there, I'm learning about the place, I'm learning about the music there, why they're doing what they're doing. And I decided that, it would be kind of cool to bring something into the States because the US is kind of like an export country. We export everything. We export our culture. We figure everybody loves what we do because it's the best. And it's actually because nothing comes in. You don't think goes out,
Right.
right? And so I wanted to kind of break that mentality a little bit because like I see it even in the way we do our politics, we're very insulated. I mean, even what's happening now, a lot of the way this country is as fucked up as it is because we've fallen for this kind of way of thinking that it's not real, but it works because it's been reinforced for such a long period of time. And so anyway, I just thought that would be kind of cool to bring that out here. I mean, it was on a business level, a really stupid thing to do. It was, I had this band from Australia, the second thing I put out, and I was so excited. Like they had this, they're called Not From There. They had this single, it was killer. And in Australia, it was actually a hit. And I just wrote to the label, say, hey man, I love the guys in the band. It's like, I'd like to put it out here. And they were excited. They here you go. Nobody in the US was interested in it. And I remember the day it came out, and then I called my distributor and said, how many have we sold? And he's like, 2.
Right.
It was like, what? I spent a couple $1,000s on, PR and college radio, and it did well in college radio. I had some charts, but the reality was, doing this thing that I was doing was kind of weird, and it didn't make a lot of sense. And also I worked with a lot of variety of different kind of music because that, to me, that was interesting. But to do this as a business, when your business depends on sales, it was not the way to go. The way to go was have a niche, find one thing, and keep reinforcing that niche. Right? And create a followers that follow that one niche that you do. I didn't do that. So I've been doing this money losing thing for about 20 years now. But now I've been doing it long enough where actually kind of known for doing what I do. And people want to hear it because I've kind of built my own niche in a way.
I admire that.
It's okay. It's doing okay now.
Great. Do you still work with Culture Shock?
I don't work with them, but I know them. I'm good. I mean, great friends with them. There's a certain point for what I could do. If they could do it themselves, they should do it themselves.
Right.
But I loved working with them. They were great guys. I still stay in touch. Actually, so, one of the guys in Culture Shock, Mario, he was the guy that I told you that story about Bosnia. He left and went over the bridge. Right. Yeah.
I worked at a pawn shop in Seattle for a little while, and I sold him something, or maybe I almost, we're connected on Facebook still. Cool. But I also know Guy Davis, the bass player there. He was in a band in the '90s in Seattle that I was really, really into. They were a cool band. He's an interesting writer too.
Yeah, they're all those guys. I mean, they're all super talented guys. They were they're one of these bands that you go in to record, they do it in one take and it's done.
Right.
And it's not easy music to play.
No, man,
right?
It's not simple
at all.
Time signature changes, and there's an interesting eclectic music scene in Seattle that people associate Seattle with one thing, and it's not what Seattle is. And it's not even what Seattle ever really was. Maybe for a couple years, there was an influx of people trying to emulate those things. Mm-hmm. But they quickly got their asses handed to them. And they bailed, or they, reassessed their values. And, it's crazy. But that's one of those bands that, if people ever get a chance to go see them live, really
definitely worth it. Absolutely great.
Do you have new releases that you're working on?
One just came out 2 days ago. A band from Chile called Como Asesinar a Felipes. They're kind of a hip hop band.
What does that mean? What is
really like hip hop, but with blue note jazz influence, dark jazz.
Yeah.
Very eclectic, dark, but for Chile, very appropriate, especially with what's going on there now. They're kind of it's speaking to people, and I've worked with them now for 10 years. I've done probably 5 records with them, And that's a tough sell. I mean, it's all in Spanish. I mean, try to sell that in the States, we
Right.
did a tour, California, and it was great, but it was a van tour.
Right.
It
Did you
was
travel
probably the
with
most
them?
disgusting hotel room I've ever seen. And that says a lot. That's from 30 years of touring. It was probably the most disgusting one I've ever seen. Really
Were you
skinny van.
traveling with them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was driving the van.
Tour managing.
Absolutely.
Uh, are they English speakers? You're fluent Spanish, I'm
Some of
assuming.
the guys are, but I'm fluent. I used to be fluent Spanish. Yeah, but mostly I can talk to them. And yeah, they're cool. They have a record out called MMXX that just came out. That's it's a little more hip hoppy, but there's something they're just I love them. I love them. They have kind
Oh,
of a krautrock thing. It's very intelligent for hip hop.
it's
Um,
it's Blue Note Krautrock. Is that what you just said?
Basically,
Basically,
exactly what it is.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I gotta check this out.
Right. There's a band from Russia that I just released too about a week and a half ago called USSSY.
Uh huh.
Another really interesting band. So they play microtonal stuff. Like this dude is like microtonal guitar. It's like kind of like Afghani like truck driver music, but like with drums and guitar, and it's very fluid and very natural. Where
When you
you
say
could
truck
hear it
driver
like on a
music, you
bus
mean
driving through Afghanistan, but it's also like very very much them. It's very cool. It's all instrumental.
I imagine that most people that are still listening know what microtonal music is or
Hmm.
know what microtones are, but will you tell the layperson right now what
Yeah.
that means? Because if my sister
So
listens, she's going to be
when you
like,
hear a lot of, I'll make it just like an example more than a real description. It's like when you hear a lot of Turkish music or Arabic music, there's notes that go in between that sound like they're out of tune, but it feels very natural. It doesn't feel wrong. It just doesn't. You couldn't play it on a piano, for example. These guys have guitars that will play those notes in the middle, and it's this kind of unsettling, beautiful type of thing when you do it well, and they do it well. So yeah,
so here's something that never occurred to me. I've always like I never there was a place called Lark in the Morning in Seattle that had all these um, exotic instruments. And I became obsessed with the saws. And I still have never bought one. I probably, you know what? I'm going to buy one today.
I
Fuck it.
think you should do that. I
And
highly recommend it.
but I just
There's
was
online saws classes too on YouTube and stuff now. You could learn it pretty quick.
I be
Well, to get started, I wouldn't say you'd be amazing really
you
quick,
don't
but
know the limits of my talent. um uh but microtonal music, like you said, the notes that you can play, for instance, like on a sitar or a saz, don't exist on a piano because we're dealing with 12-tone Western music, right?
Mhm.
Um, but in the places where this music is written and performed, surely they don't call it microtonal music, right? They just call it
Right, it's
music.
music.
Yeah. Is there
Right.
an this? I guess the spaces in between notes are just I don't even know what the fuck you call them.
I mean, and you can get into quarter tones too, not
Right.
just half tones. I mean, you can get the guys that are the real masters can really get in there and get in these really delicate places.
Oh, trust me, I know about being a quarter of a tone off. I have a fretless. That's what I'm best at on the fretless. uh, yeah, that's crazy. Do you play with folks when you're traveling, or have you gotten into this? Do you own exotic
How does
instruments and can you perform
I
music
do?
on them?
I do. Let me see if I have some like handy. I have a microtonal Casio keyboard.
Really?
It's got Arabic script all over it, but it's upstairs. I was thinking bring it down. I've got one. Yeah,
Cass
but not any guitars. I would love to get into that. Actually, I think it's beautiful. I think when done right, well, I really like it.
Oh yeah. But wait a minute. Let me back up for a minute. You have a microtonal Casio keyboard?
You got 2 seconds?
Yeah, I do. I have 20 seconds for
You're gonna
this.
like this. Hold on.
I can. All right, here goes Bill. He's digging out the keyboard. I can see him. He is all right. There he's going. Oh, he's going upstairs. I thought he was going to dig it out from behind a space there, but I can't wait to see this thing. Uh, Here he comes back. This is. I had no idea that this is how this conversation was going to go, but this is so far really great. This keyboard is fucking big. It's way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Here he's shown it to me. Oh, it's got some Arabic writing on it, and the key. Whoa. Okay.
This is a microtonal keyboard.
So, is it?
So I cannot play it well, but if you look, these are, I guess these are like middle between sharps and flats that you can program. So there are different Arabic scales that you can actually make.
So you have to actually, there are preset scales, like you hit one of those buttons,
right,
and it'll...
Right, within Arabic music, right, which I guess, so there's a lot of variation of where the quarter tones and half tones are. It's not one size fits all.
I'm going to ask you some...
This isn't going to fire up, but this is a cool, and everything sounds like a Holiday Inn in Dubai.
That's amazing. I'm going to ask you some incredibly naive questions right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know anything about the discipline of music theory in...
Not much.
No.
Not much. It's a little bit, but I was always more intuitive. I feel like every time I tried to get into theory, maybe I'm ADD. I just couldn't, it didn't ever stick with me.
I mean, I'm certainly not someone to ask for theory lessons from. I know the difference between major and minor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the modes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can play, but if someone was like, do the flip-a-doodle-dee and mode, I'd be like, I don't know what that is.
To me, I mean, I really respect people that do know it. I wish I did. But it's like when you learn a language, I kind of internalize that language into my own language. So when I'm playing music, I'm just speaking, but I have a word for it, my own word for it. I can't learn it like in a classroom situation. It's just...
Where did you get that crazy fucking keyboard?
I got this. I can't remember because I've had it for like 25 years, but I think I got it when we played in Israel. I think I did.
Wow.
I think I bought it in Israel. It was in Jaffa at a music store, and I brought it home.
That's incredible. Surely you have picked up some things over the years that are interesting like that?
Quite a few. Yeah, too much. But I'm looking at a shelf of just shit that I need to get rid of, but I don't want to. And it's not sexy, but it's stuff that I've had from, over the years.
I am a huge fan of percussion, especially on recordings, right? It does, it doesn't always translate to performing live, but, adding a little bit of percussion in a part and putting it low in the mix, man, that will change an entire vibe, right?
Totally.
Do you have an interesting collection of stuff that you've...
Percussion stuff?
Yeah, from around the world? Like, that seems like...
I have more like wood blocks. Nothing where I really... nothing that I really used. For better or worse, I have a computer for that.
Right. Yeah.
I do have some... Let me see.
This is fucking great. Bill's going over to his closet now, which is just out of frame. And I have no idea where he's digging around in, but the shelves that I can see here he comes back shaking his head. No
percussion handy.
No dice.
I do have some percussion, but not here. It's at the studio.
Do you have a studio space that you work out of in San Francisco?
It's Faith No More's rehearsal space, but I have all my recording gear there. So we made our album Sol Invictus there
In your
with my
at your
gear.
space. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, what happened was we were just starting to play, and I was like, got together with the drummer. I was like, I had some ideas. We started writing it, and I was like, well, I mean, I record bands all the time. I've picked up gear over the years. It's like, well, let's just record it, and start writing with it. It's like, stuff sounds good enough. We could probably just release this. And it's like, let's just keep going. And so we didn't tell anybody we were making a record at all. We didn't, Faith No More was broken up for 13 years. And it's like, last thing we want to do is to create this thing. Oh my God, they're making a record again. What's it going to sound like? And so we're just like, just cut that shit out. Let's just not even tell anybody. I didn't even bring an engineer in. I engineered it myself, which was a little stressful.
Right.
Because the quality of the recording was on my shoulders of my band, but we recorded the whole album there and we didn't mix it there. I didn't trust myself to do that. I went to Matt Wallace's studio to do that, but basically that was it. So my studio now is a rehearsal room.
Huh.
Yeah.
And you guys maintain that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great place in Oakland, Soundwave. Al's been we rehearsed at his place since the pre-Angel Dust days. So he's got a room for us. I moved into Testament's old room where they recorded all their records. Oh. So they had a little control booth built already, and it's good enough for me for working. It's great.
They were recording their records there.
Yeah.
When were they?
I would say probably they moved out of there about 2.5, 3 years ago. So, the 10 years before that, they probably made 3 records out of there.
Right. I thought that you were saying you had been in that room since.
We moved into, oh God, well, we were in another room. It was a really nice big old room, but it flooded twice.
Not that great.
Flood like because it was below sea level. When it rained, the water came through the floor.
Oh, that sucks.
But we're talking about 12 inches high, and I had a lot of nice gear.
Sure.
It got saved both times, which is great. Which is bad is to save the gear, they had to rip everything out as fast as they could,
right?
And put it in a dry room. So after the second one of those, it's like this is not happening. I'm not doing that again.
Right. I love that. I mean, it's interesting that technology has brought us to a place, and also your experience has brought you to a place where when you first started, you were making recordings for the band on a 4-track, and now you're making the records again. Yeah.
Cool. Very empowering. I mean, it's nice to be, 30 years later and go, look at where we are now, and that people want to hear what we're doing too. It's, you can't discount that, right?
I don't think that people will ever will cease to want to hear music from Faith No More.
No, but my experience is the first 2/3 of our existence, nobody wanted to hear music by Faith No More. So I appreciate it.
You guys are definitely a left of center band. And so to be embraced on such a large scale is an interesting thing to even, I have enjoyed the band since I heard
extremely lucky, and I feel very satisfied about that.
There really are only I think a handful of bands who achieve that level of success and do exist in that sort of space that defies convention with such ferocity too.
It's amazing to be able to know that if we do something, it can be whatever we want it to be. And there's people open-minded enough to accept that because we wanted to do it. Like, that is an amazing place to be in.
Right. Well, it is working. Are you working on music now? Do you work on, I know you said that you're constantly writing, but music that you work on sounds like Faith No More typically.
I do,
but
yes. With Faith No More, it's a matter of, like I said, there's 5 people in the band. When the band wants to do it, the band will do it. When everybody really wants to do it, it'll happen. And
Sure.
so that means when it happens, it's the right thing to do. But I'm not, I can't put myself in the position of saying when that is, or
Sure. I mean,
making anybody to do anything, right?
any projects that you're working on outside of Faith No More? Musical
I am. Yeah,
things?
okay. So there's a record I just worked on that took me 7 years, 6.5 years to do.
Wow.
That came out about 3 months ago. It's called The Talking Book.
Okay.
It's an abstract experimental record. This is the studio flood was part of why it took 6 years, because I was pretty much grounded for a year after that, just because you get everything ripped out of the room, and then you're like, well, I've got to put it back, but I never really did like this thing. Maybe I should reconfigure what I want my studio to be, right? So that takes 3 or 4 or 6 months of selling stuff and getting new stuff that you're going to do. And one of the guys in my group, this guy Jared, who's one of my partners. There's 3 of us, Dominic and Jared. He had a kid, and that took time. But I got in a motorcycle accident. That took time. So it took 6 years. And it's this abstract music that probably, 99% of people are never going to listen to or like. But I think that we did it. I'm really, really happy with what we did. And I think we got, it's funny when we talk about like abstract music, there aren't any rules in a way. So there's a lot of freedom, but the downside of it is it isn't really ready until it's right, until it's all feeling, all completely feeling. So it wasn't feeling right. It just wasn't feeling right. And it actually took much more work than if this was a rock album or something like that.
Right.
But it that's what it took. That is what it is.
When you say abstract, do you mean atonal? Do you mean
there's some atonal,
free time?
A lot of what we call musique concrète, sounds taken from other things and made musical. There's a little more instrumentation. We did a record in 2011, and that had a little more where we were getting old records and we were slowing them down to like 7.5 RPM and sampling them, and then creating instruments out of that. So they had the vibe of instruments and the feeling in the air, but they were completely different things.
Right.
And it was a little more drony, but there was some music. This one has a lot more music, a lot more like boy, what could I say? There's some 70s movie soundtrack moments, maybe I could say, but there's still a lot of sound and noise and collage, and it was a little bit like clay, like you're working with it and you just keep working on it, and it would turn into different things, and then we're like, well, are we ever gonna fucking get there? And we got there.
So you said 7 years?
7 years. 6.5. Yeah.
That must have been an incredible bit of a just emotional release, and also just a relief.
It was a relief. It was a journey. I mean, literally. I mean, and me between the guys we did it with. I mean, I really like the guys, and I think we all kept it pretty positive. But there's so many parts of when you're in this process and it doesn't have an end in sight, and you're like, am I just too anal? Am I just overthinking it? But it's not right. And like, do I have a psychological problem? What is it? Right. But you can't dictate when it's done. You just know when it is, and it just kept coming back. No. And it was a process. It was a trip.
In a process like that, I imagine there's a certain threshold where many doubts start to enter your mind, and you're like, "Fuck,
definitely.
Is this going to get done? Am I overthinking? Was I done 2 years ago?
Exactly.
And am I just?
Would anybody know the difference? Right? Like, maybe it's just me, right?
But isn't that what matters the most when you're creating something?
Well, that's why it takes as long as it does.
Right. I think that's lost on some folks. I've never enjoyed that remark like, will anyone notice the difference? Because if it's something that bothers me, well, fuck, I'm somebody, you know,
Totally.
and
But then you also know, as you've made records, that there's no such thing as a record you're 100% satisfied with
right,
ever.
right.
No matter how high the budget, how much time you had to spend, there's always things you could have done better.
I don't know if
So
there's even a
you do have to
song.
let things go.
I don't even know if there's a song I've ever performed on where there's not a cringe moment for me. Where I'm
Exactly.
like, oh
Exactly.
God.
It's built into the process of music making, I think. So
Um,
you do have to let things go. You
yeah,
do
for
have
sure.
to have that discretion of knowing when to let it go and when to keep going.
In terms of performance, I mean, I know we touched on it before, and this is something that I've talked to people about a bit.
Yeah.
I used to be one of these. I used to get obsessed if I flubbed, if I fucked something up. I had such a pressure on myself, right, that it would taint the rest of a performance for me. And then recovering from that would be, I mean, really, it's a fucking mental health issue. If I think about it too much, it's like, I don't know why I went through times in my life where I couldn't just enjoy a performance, even if I fucked something up. I'm there now, but I'm also fat. Like I feel like if I'm worried about my performance too much, like there are a lot of things that are way more important in life and reality that if I wanted to worry, I could focus my energies. But have you struggled with those sorts of things?
Absolutely. I mean, hey, fuck, who doesn't like to hit a hole in one, right?
Right.
Who doesn't like to hit home runs? Everybody likes home runs. So you always want to hit the home run. And, just by the law of averages, it just doesn't happen every single time you go up to bat, right? But you have to have that drive as well, because if you don't, you're never going to get it. Right. So they have to have that ambition, but it is tough. It's tough. Also, like with live performance, it's funny. I don't have stage fright, but I feel pressure. Like, I feel like with Fate No More, especially, it's more like professional boxing. I see doing a gig is going into a boxing match where it's like, I'm going to knock them out or I'm going to get knocked out. And it's like, it's always like that beforehand. And, you get older and you're like, you get these aches and you're like, can I knock the guy out? Like you feel like George Foreman, at 55, like still doing it. But like, these young kids are pretty fucking amazing. And I would say where I would get depressed more often after gigs, if things weren't right. Now I can let that go. But before the gig is much harder. Of like, and I have this weird thing that happens to me where I get tired.
Before
I start getting sleepy before the gig. Like they go 1 hour to go, and I start, like, oh, I'm not going to wake up in time to do the gig.
Right.
And that's how my body deals with this kind of stress thing. And so what do? I get a cup of coffee. Stupid, right? Because I'm going to be up all night now. But I need it because I'm going to fall asleep, right? And then I start eating things, and then, give me a shot of this. And, oh, my God, my arm, I needed aspirin, So by the time I walk on, by the second song, I'm completely fine. It's generally a great gig. But beforehand, it's just brutal.
I lost my stage fright a long time ago as well.
Mm-hmm.
One weird thing, and I wouldn't even call it a ritual. This is going to be a little, cover your ears if you... I have to go poop before a show.
I know people who do that.
No, like it is like clockwork, and it doesn't matter what time the gig is. It doesn't matter if I'm playing at 3:30 on the day stage or if I'm playing at 11:30 at night. Like within 5 minutes of starting a show, if you are seeing me on stage, I just pooped.
I know people exactly who have that. I don't have that, but I know people.
What do you think that is? You seem smart.
I'm not going to name any names, but yeah.
You seem smart. What do you think that is?
I don't know.
Is that nerves?
It seems healthy to me.
I mean,
it seems like you're getting ready to do your thing. I mean, it's like, basically the liver pushing toxins out of you, right?
Yeah, but it just seems so unusual to me. And anyone that's ever been in a band with me knows it's like when I get to a venue, the first thing I do is like, well, fuck, how far away is the toilet from the stage? Because sometimes, and
It's really that serious.
how
Like you actually
filthy.
cannot, if you don't go, you can't do the gig.
No,
Could it be like that? Like
I
if you
could
had to
do
go
the
to some
gig.
show in the middle of Finland, in the middle of the woods, and there's no toilets there, could you do the show?
I might be uncomfortable, or it might,
Okay.
the sensation might pass,
Uh-huh.
but I would need to go. And if I, it would definitely affect my state of mind walking on stage if I didn't do that strange, like, um,
You've been
unwanted
very
ritual.
constipated,
Like,
Riffs. Yeah.
yeah, I don't like. It's not a ritual that I want to perform.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
I don't know. There's something in it there, not just Freudian. I think there's probably something healthy about it.
Not just Freudian. It's something in addition
I'm
to
not going to
that.
discount that there could be some of that too.
Hey, did you say the name of this record, this 7-year record?
Oh, it's
The
called the
Talking
Talking
Book.
Book. Yeah, Talking Book 2.
I'm gonna tag that up at the top,
Check it.
and I'm gonna
Check
talk
it,
about it
actually.
in
Yeah,
the
it's on all
intro.
the streaming stuff. You can hear it. Yeah, I'd be curious actually what you think about it if you hear it.
I talk about this a lot, but because I grew up in this sort of like hick town,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't exposed to much, but when I did get exposure to things, uh, I would explore that for sure. And there was none of my friends that I could talk to about any of this stuff. There were a couple kids that were, that listened to suicidal tendencies, maybe, but there were like 4 skateboarders in the whole town. So,
Right.
um, but when I got to Seattle, I had such a chip on my shoulder, like folks wouldn't have me in their, because
Right.
they didn't want a Jackson wielding
Right.
shredder or whatever, and so that's when I started getting into music that I thought was challenging, and I had a pirate radio show, and I'd make noise collage, and I started getting into grind,
Really
and
cool.
but there was a lot of stuff that it was very challenging to listen to, and I think that people don't. And now I can put it on depending on my mood, challenging music, atonal music, free jazz, whatever. Now I can put it on, and in the right mood, it can really change my day in a
Mm-hmm.
very positive way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was so difficult. It was like a metamorphosis, like
Right.
retraining myself to enjoy something, right?
Sure.
Um, but I think that I think it should be required listening. And unfortunately, popular music is just sort of like a lot of canned stuff. And
It's food, right? I mean, hey, foie gras is not an instant taste,
no,
but it's fantastic when you get to know it and you get to enjoy it. It's great.
sure,
You can't live on hamburgers all the time.
right. Literally.
Yeah, and people do.
Not for
Literally.
very long. not, not for as long as I'd like to live. Well, yeah, I can't wait to hear that.
Cool.
Um, I really appreciate you taking so much time to talk to me. I have to drive to pick my wife up at the
Yeah.
train. We live in the country again now. Only
How's
we're
it the
surrounded.
second time?
Well, it's great
You get the
because
best parts of it now, right?
well, yeah, we live up near Hudson, New York.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool. Nice.
we're surrounded by farms.
So it's beautiful right now.
Oh, it's incredible.
This is the time of year. Yeah.
Never experienced the fall before I came here.
Cool.
Never. But
Wow.
yeah, we're surrounded by farms, and then also, city expats.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are a ton of musicians up here and artists, and there's no shortage of things. Well, this year's certainly an exception, but yeah, it's funny that this year it's obviously a piece of shit year, but it hasn't really fucked up my routine.
Right. I hear you.
I got this microphone,
You
and
can go outside to go on a nice walk, right?
oh man,
You can work for a few hours, take a break, walk outside.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
I can't wait to listen to these new releases.
I'll send you a link to them too. So just so you know where they are and what's the deal is.
Awesome.
And also just, hey, if you don't like them, that's cool too. That doesn't bother me.
Right.
But if you do, just let me know.
Awesome. I will do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
if you,
cool.
If you come out this way, once things clear up, hit me up.
I'll be there because the booze is coming out.
Fuck.
So
we didn't even talk about it.
In spring. Yeah.
Are you found a distributor here?
Yeah, we're basically have one. Yes. It's like, it's happening.
Did it launch? It launched?
No, the boat doesn't come in till December. So we got a couple months.
I'll put a link up at the top. We just rambled on for a while. We didn't even talk about your booze because I wanted to know how it even came to be.
Well, the booze started just quickly when I took that car ride through Yugoslavia. Well, that's when I got into this Rakija stuff, was that trip on that East German car. And they make good shit, but it never made its way out here. And I would go out there with bands on tour and people give me their homemade stuff. The guys that know how to make it is fucking amazing stuff. Right. So I decided I was just going to start importing it, and a good one. So people could see what it is, because it doesn't taste like anything else that anybody really has had out here. It's a new thing. Unless you're from that region, and then it's just a classic thing.
Is it a brown liquor?
This one is. It's brownish barrel.
Uh-huh.
It's got 18 months in the barrel. Not too long, but enough to give it a little vanilla. We're going to have a clear one as well. This is from plums, from special plums from the center of Serbia.
Mm-hmm.
That just from a farm where many, many generations have made this.
Is it similar to a whiskey or a rum?
This is like a plum whiskey, like a Slivovitz whiskey.
Uh-huh.
But Slivovitz, it's the stuff that is Slivovitz. It's not this. It's the same plum, but this is a really refined way of making it. It's very smooth and savory, sipping, like a whiskey in a way, a plum whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
I will put a link to the website you sent me before up at
cool.
the top of the episode, so that
yeah, great.
I kind of dropped the ball on that.
That's cool.
Is it cool? But again, thank you so much. It's been great hearing some stories from you.
Great, yeah, I had a great time, and I'm glad we got to do this.
Well, stay safe.
Thanks for being persistent.
Hey, you know what? If not for persistence, I would still have that Jackson.
Exactly. All right, man.
Stay safe, and in that anarchist jurisdiction, it's terrible. It's dangerous out there, isn't it?
Oh, radical left is taking over the streets.
It's fucking terrible, man.
I saw a guy crapping on the sidewalk the other day. It's horrible.
I mean, some things never change.
Exactly. It was San Francisco, the same San Francisco that brought me here. Yep.
If you don't see someone crapping or shooting up on the street, you start to question if there's a ripple in in reality.
That's right. In this town, for sure.
Yeah. All right, bud. Well, take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.